Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Raptors. On today's show, I'll talk a little bit about some practice updates, some injury news and notes from the Raptors and their media availabilities earlier on today. But for the most part, today's episode is about checking in with some old pals. I'm going to be joined by Matt Peck of Locked on Bulls to talk all about DeMar DeRozan and what he's done so far for the Bulls this season. And then I'm going to be joined by Giancarlo Navas from Miami Heat Beat as he hops on to talk about Kyle Lowry and how he has basically changed the Miami Heat into Lowry culture as opposed to the Heat culture thing they had going on before. All of it's going to be super fun. You can get ready for it. That's coming up in just 1 second.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1053. Yeah, 1053 of Locked On Raptors for Tuesday, November the 9th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at WoodleySean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can find the podcast on all of your favorite podcast providers for absolutely free. You can subscribe to, rate, review, follow, whatever it is your app of choice asks you to do to support the podcast you love. You can do that over there. You can also follow the podcast and subscribe on YouTube. It's very much appreciated when you go ahead and do that as well. We've got a nice little YouTube community building up over there. Would love to see more wonderful faces join the list of subs that is now over 1,200 people long. Woohoo! Also, as a reminder, I want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I know this is later on in the day than typical because of scheduling and all that stuff, but I'm sure you have abstained from other podcast listening, waiting for this episode to drop because it is your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by RockAuto.com, our friends over there with an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you'll ever need. Check them out and tell them that Locked On sent you over at RockAuto.com. More on them a little bit later. All right, on today's show, we are going to be joined, as promised, by Matt Peck of Locked On Bulls and then Giancarlo Navas of Miami Heat Beat. And we are going to talk to them about how DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry have caught up those particular fan bases very much in their charm and glory. It's going to be a lot of fun. DeMar DeRozan has been like my favorite player to watch in all of basketball so far this season. The Bulls are my favorite team to watch, non-Raptors division. They had a really fun win last night over the Nets that featured just a hilarious mid-range bucket with like 3 dudes in his face to kind of blow it open for the Bulls in the fourth quarter against Brooklyn last night. We're going to talk about DeMar with Matt Peck and kind of get a sense of what Bulls fans are feeling about DeMar DeRozan, a very underappreciated player who finally has more people joining on and feeling the DeMar appreciation. He was kind of out in the woods with the Spurs for a couple of years there. The Bulls are a big national franchise, all that stuff, and he's getting his just praise as a result. So we'll talk to Matt about that in segment 2. And then we'll round things out with Giancarlo Navas from Miami Heat Beat, who is a longtime Kyle Lowry fan and stan, despite being a Heat guy. And, of course, now Lowry's playing for his team. We're going to talk about how he has changed the mix down there with the no longer Eastern Conference leading Miami Heat, but they are leading and getting pushed by Nikola Jokic after pissing him off. Maybe we'll talk about that with Giancarlo later on as well. But we should start off with just some notes and news from practice. The Raptors practice today before heading out on their road trip. They got 2 games coming up on the road in Boston and in Philly tomorrow night. And on Thursday, just a heads up, tomorrow's show will be with John Corrales from Locked On Celtics as we tee up that game with a little crossover action. Always love talking to John, the only acceptable Celtics fan, I always say. But we will, get to see, as was told today, Pascal Siakam playing in at least the first game of the back-to-back. The Nick Nurse news note from today was that unsure if Pascal will be playing both games of the back-to-back. He will play tomorrow, unsure of his status for the Sixers game on Thursday. And if you're going to pick Pascal to play in one of these games, I'm glad it's the Celtics game. The Celtics obviously have been on kind of hard times this season, though they have won a few games recently. They're a better team right now in terms of available healthy players than the Sixers are, because remember, the Sixers have no one available as it stands right now. Matisse Thybulle is out in the COVID protocols. Tobias Harris tested positive for COVID back on November 3rd. Still doesn't seem like he's going to be back and available for the game on Thursday. Joel Embiid is going to be out probably like 10 days at the very least after testing positive or entering the protocols. So he won't be available. And that obviously makes it a little bit easier for the Raptors on the defensive side of the ball, which is nice. Obviously, Embiid always commands a lot of attention and very careful scheming. They're usually quite good at it, but it's a lot better to not have to prepare for Joel Embiid. And obviously not having Pascal Siakam for that game, if he does sit out the second half of the back-to-back, that's probably the one you want. If you don't have to have that extra set of hands defensively to throw double teams towards Joel Embiid, you're probably fine without Siakam in that game. Of course, they're also missing Isaiah Joe. They're missing, let me pull up their injury report. I had it off the top of my head. Ben Simmons is still Ben Simmons, so he's not available. And then Seth Curry is also day-to-day right now. So we will see if there's even like a rosterable team for the Sixers. It might be something resembling what we saw from the Raptors last season, oftentimes when they were down a lot of players in the Tampa Hell season. We could see lots of Paul Reed and Tyrese Maxey is probably going to take like 45 shots. And that probably bodes well for the Raptors in that game on Thursday. We'll talk about that one later on, though. But if you are going to pick one game for Pascal to play here between the Celtics and the and the Sixers, that's the one. Not just because the Sixers are going to be without players as well. Pascal, if you think back to the bubble, everyone looks back to the bubble. It's, oh, what a nightmare it was for Pascal. He was incredibly good defensively in that series against the Celtics in particular. And he obviously offers a really nice defensive option to throw at Jason Tatum. You're not only leaving Scotty Barnes out to dry, making that his top assignment. OG Anunoby doesn't have to make it his top assignment. Obviously, Jaylen Brown is a difficult piece to deal with as well. Having Pascal on hand for that game is going to be huge with the big wings that the Celtics throw out at you. And so I'm particularly fascinated to see how that starting lineup the Raptors rolled out in the first Siakam game back is going to look if they do roll it out against the Celtics. Of course, the Celtics have been starting Al Horford and Robert Williams together a bunch, and they play those guys together a lot. Robert Williams is, of course, an imposing rebounding threat and all of that. Very curious to see if the Raptors stick with their guns and say, we're going to play small better than you can play big, and we're going to hit the offensive glass the way we did in that first game against you and completely bludgeon you that way. Could that be how they go about it? I hope it is, because I'd like to see them just play that small lineup all the time, because I think it's their best look. But either way, having Siakam available, whether they're going to play big or small, you can kind of go either way against that Celtics team, I suppose. Maybe swap Trent out, put in Precious Achiuwa as your starting center, and maybe you just fight large with large and go 6'9", 2 through 5. Either way, nice that Siakam will be playing that game. If he doesn't play against the Sixers, they'll probably have enough to get by, even though they will also have another injury in the form of Khem Birch, who is going to miss both of these games. Again, less of a problem than it would have been. You'd figure Khem Birch would be one of the first lines of defense against a healthy Joel Embiid. He won't be there on Thursday, so you're not missing it out on that too much. Obviously, it's still nice to have Khem Birch around. He steadies things. He kind of brings a calm and sort of reliability to the Raptors in the half court in particular, both on defense and on offense, frankly, that you miss. Obviously, he's been a really, really key contributor, been part of some huge runs this season, just offering that steady hand at center. He won't be available with the right knee swelling that he's been going through, missing the game against the Nets on Sunday as well. Won't see him until at least later on in the week on Saturday, I believe is their next game after they take on the Sixers. So not ideal, of course, to not have Khem Birch. But again, this like back-to-back here, it's nice that the Celtics are the front end of it. And maybe you can kind of pick up that win in Boston. Obviously, it will be tough to win a second game in Boston so far this season, but they've shown they have the chops. And, I expect big things if Pascal's going to be available in particular. But with that Sixers game, you might be able to steal a second night of a back-to-back win, even with a couple guys not available if Siakam and Birch aren't there, because the Sixers are going to have such a ragtag crew. Either way, those are your updates from practice today. Let's get to checking in with some old pals. DeMar DeRozan coming up in the next segment, and then Giancarlo Navas is going to stop by to talk about Kyle Lowry in the final segment of the show. But first, we got Matt Peck from Locked On Bulls, the wonderful Locked On Bulls podcast. You should go listen to that with Matt and Big Dave. We will get to Matt in 1 second and talk about DeMar. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Truebill, which is a new sponsor for the podcast. And honestly, this one speaks to me. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam, essentially, out to get you and to count on you forgetting things a month after you sign up for a free trial. Don't let greedy corporations pocket the money that you don't want to be giving them, and download Truebill to take care of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. I've plenty of experience with this. I'm a forgetful guy. I one time signed up for an app or a site that you can make like e-cards on because it was COVID and I wanted to send e-cards to the family members I couldn't see. I spent like $50 and made one card, and then I forgot about the subscription and I paid like $50 for an entire year, 2 years in a row, because I'm a fool and I forgot. Well, guess what? Truebill would have stopped that issue from happening entirely. If you're a forgetful person like me, or you just have too many subscriptions to keep a handle of, Truebill is the answer for you. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now to truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year if you are like me and sign up for things that you forget to cancel. truebill.com/lockedonnba. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. It has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. It is daily fantasy made easy. And if you have not checked it out yet, you are missing out. I'm telling you, you're going to love this app. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes in each game. And all of the users on Prize Picks who go through our promo code, which is NBA, will get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You put in $100, they match that up to $100, $200. Yeah, it's a wonderful way to begin your Prize Picks career. You can pick 2 to 5 players in an over-under matchup, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Prize Picks allows mixed sport entries as well, so you can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Patrick Mahomes and the over on Connor McDavid goals. It's a beautiful, beautiful utopia for sports fans who like to take part in DFS. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code NBA, or go to your App Store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I know I love it, and you will too. All right, let's get to it now. Myself, Matt Peck from Locked On Bulls, talking about the glory that is watching DeMar DeRozan play for your basketball team. That's coming up. All right, joining me now on Locked On Raptors is another Locked On pal from the wonderful Locked On Bulls podcast. It's Matt Peck. Matt, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, Sean. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I got to say, watching DeMar DeRozan last night is part of the reason why that is the case. We're recording this on Tuesday, the night after DeMar put up 28 against the Nets. He's been having a wonderful, wonderful season. And so, yeah, I do kind of just want to pick your brain on the joy that is watching DeMar DeRozan play basketball. I'm very happy that like a new subset of fans now gets the chance to appreciate, I think, a very easy to not appreciate style of play. He's been delightful. So let's start back in the summer when they make the signing, Matt. They sign him for, what is it, like 3 years, 87 or something like that. Everyone's like, oh, it's too much money for DeMar DeRozan. Oh my God, is he a max player? Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. What was your reaction to the signing originally? And did you have any sort of expectation for what DeMar would be when the season began?
Yeah, I mean, I loved the signing, to be honest, because I saw it as an intelligent addition to the roster, addressing weaknesses of the team last season that the new front office came and observed. Okay, what do we have? What are we good at? What do we not have? What are we bad at? And when you think about DeMar DeRozan's strengths, he takes care of the basketball. He makes clutch shots late in games and is not afraid to take those shots, and he gets to the free throw line. The Bulls had the least amount of free throw attempts per game of all 30 NBA teams last season. DeMar already addressing that problem, averaging 7.9 attempts per game, I think, at the charity stripe through their first 10 games. Obviously, you see that clutch shooting gene as well. He is a great complementary piece to Zach LaVine. They have each scored 20 or more in 8 of the Bulls' first 10 games. The Bulls are 7-3. I think there's some correlation there. He's great. And the little cherry on top of this DeMar Sunday so far, everybody rags him about 2 things. He doesn't shoot threes, and he can't play defense. Look, have we seen some evidence so far that DeMar occasionally gets lost playing defense off the ball? Sure, it happens. He's also made some pretty impressive and surprisingly competent plays when he's playing help defense and he's getting his hands in passing lanes. He's buying into at least the idea of trying on defense. And with some of these NBA athletes, that's all it takes for them to go from horrible defensively to kind of okay defensively. And then the three-pointers. He's only shooting 2.3 per game, but he's knocking him down at 39% so far, which, like, hey, man, I'll take that.
Yeah, I always find it offensive to me when DeMar takes threes because I'd rather watch him take cool, off-balance 18-footers. It's just me. I like the aesthetics of it all.
Right.
But let me ask you about that. Like, the aesthetic joy that is watching, like, his footwork and the way he kind of just, like, dupes dudes into jumping into him as he's pump faking. I know he did it to Scotty Barnes when the Raptors played Chicago a couple weeks ago. It was like Scotty Barnes' first, like, welcome to the NBA moment in a lot of ways, where DeMar pump fakes him, he flies into him, and DeMar goes to the line. Like, the pump fake seems like it's like new foul rule proof almost. Like, it's still going to dupe guys basically every game, even though he's been doing it for 10, 12 years. Like, just kind of, I guess, fill me in on sort of what you've enjoyed about just the experience of watching him operate.
Yeah, I think especially when you compare it to how the Bulls really struggled, whether it was Zach LaVine or Zach LaVine or Zach LaVine, to get shots that they wanted where they wanted them on the floor for the last couple of seasons. It is so much fun watching DeMar get to his spots where he wants to take those mid-range shots because he is so gosh darn good at it. And he loves just that little area right around the free throw line. Maybe it's the left corner, maybe it's the right corner, maybe it's right there at the top of the key. But somebody screenshotted a whole bunch of different DeMar shots on Bulls Twitter from a few years ago and was like, these are all actually different shots that DeMar took tonight, but you look and it's like same spot. And he canned all of them. The guy is so good with his feet and using those little, like, herky-jerky pump fakes to get a clean enough look where if he's shooting from 18, like, as soon as it leaves his hands, you're like, oh yeah, that's going in. And most of the time it does.
Yeah, he had a shot last night that went in against the Nets. It was like the fourth quarter. I think it was like an 8-point game at the time. Might have been a 6-point game. And he hits this, like, heavily contested 20-footer. There's like 3 dudes on him. And that kind of blew that game open in a way. Like, he hits that shot. It's such a backbreaker. The Bulls go on a run subsequently. And I choose to think it was DeMar's doing to kickstart the run with that. So let me ask you about this, Matt. Obviously Bulls fans, it seems like it was a bit of a polarizing move. I think there are sort of like the Bulls fans who are just happy to have a team that's good and competent and competitive again, which I think is the right way to think about it if you're a Bulls fan. Like, having a good and cool team is good and cool, as it turns out. But, like, do you think the maybe sort of DeMar skeptics, those who are maybe like a little unsure about does this team have a championship ceiling? Are those people coming around and becoming DeMar acolytes as well in your experience?
I mean, I think that there are some out there who still see DeMar, Zach, Vooch, and Lonzo as a fun core of players who made the Bulls go from unwatchable and embarrassing to, hey, this team is fun to watch. That's actually basketball that they're playing on that court out there. I haven't seen that in years. But that still feel like their ceiling collectively as like a quadrant of players is not winning a championship. They don't, there are some people who say DeMar's good, but he's not that good. Zach's good, but he's not that good. Vooch and DeMar, people using the term like sub all-stars, right? That's sure. Like this new term that people are referring to them to. Which, okay, did I think coming into the season after this complete roster makeover that the Bulls were going to be legitimately contending for a championship this season? No. But a step is a step. And I thought if you can get one of those top 6 seeds in the East, which got better this offseason, I think, and look at the Eastern Conference standings for the first 10 to 12 games everybody's played. It's upside down. Like, Milwaukee's had some bad losses. Brooklyn's got losses. And then meanwhile, it's like, hey, look at us. We're the Washington Wizards. And we're like, like none of it makes sense so far, but the Bulls are 7-3 and right in the thick of it. And I think for the most part, the vibe in the fan base is, hey, this is fun and we'll take it. And if we don't win a championship this year or next year, like, at least we are living in the present and happy about what the present is giving us.
I'll just offer a little tip to any Bulls fans who might be listening because they saw your name on the pod and they decided to tune in because, oh, Matt Peck content, got to listen. I will say there is a lot of fun in the kind of really good relevancy that a guy like DeMar DeRozan can help bring you. Yes, the Raptors didn't win a title under him and it took trading him away in order to win a title, but I wouldn't trade the 6-7 years of DeMar kind of ascending into an all-star and then being an all-star for anything, because he was an absolute delight to watch and like the easiest guy in the world to root for as well, which is another underrated thing about him. So if you have not yet come over to the side of DeMar, Bulls fans, it's time. He's awesome. Enjoy everything he provides because he is an absolute delight. I have two more questions
I would
for
say
you,
this
Matt.
real quick. Like when it comes to DeMar not winning that title with Toronto, I said this to a lot of people who were like, "Oh, DeMar, not a winner," when the Bulls made that move. I was like, do you think it's a coincidence that when Toronto finally won the championship, it was the same season that LeBron James left for the Western Conference?
Yes,
I
that's
think
a sore spot for Raptors
bit
fans,
to do
but
with that, and not so much like, oh, DeMar's not a winner.
Yeah. That certainly didn't hinder them at all. Was LeBron not being around? You're right. Two quick ones for you, Matt. Before I let you go, I have to ask you about another former Raptor on the team, Matt Thomas. He was an apple of Raptors fans' eye for a long time. He was kind of like this cult hero for the 4 times he came in and hit a 3. I'm curious, how's the Matt Thomas experience going in Chicago? Is he similarly a cult hero, or is he very much just a 15th guy?
No, he's just kind of the guy sitting on the last spot on the bench right now. I mean, I was a little bit surprised to see like he earned the 15th and final roster spot out of training camp. And I think maybe it's just because that the Bulls saw a potential problem with the lack of 3-point shooting on this roster. And we have seen that so far through 10 games. The Bulls are top 10 in the league in field goal percentage from behind the arc, but they're like dead last in attempts per game. So maybe they saw him as a potential, like, hey, come in, knock down a few threes. But he really has not gotten any run other than mop-up duty and garbage time in regular season games. And, the cultural hero who's stolen the fans of all Bulls fans, without a doubt, is not Matt Thomas. It's Alex Caruso. Because, that guy, and like he was diving on the floor for loose balls at the UC last night. And everybody's like, that's Kirk Heinrich reincarnated, but also better. He's a better shooter, and he's Kirk Heinrich reincarnated with no hair. Look, Matt Thomas, unless knock on wood, like duty calls because the Bulls get that thin, I don't see him getting a whole lot of run. And I also did roll my eyes a little bit because like we finally fired Gar Forman, and I was like, I thought we were done with the Iowa State guys. What the heck?
Yeah, the Iowa, now that Nick Nurse is in the league, Iowa will forever be entwined with the entire NBA, regardless of whether Garpax is around or not. Last one for you, Matt. Chris Boucher, he's a power forward who is not really seemingly in the Raptors' long-term plans. The Bulls lost the power forward of their future for the season in Pat Williams. Can I interest you in a lightly used Chris Boucher for perhaps a protected second-round pick of some kind and maybe some sort of roster throw-in who is not Matt Thomas?
I tell you what, man, I've watched a number of Boucher games, and I like what I see from that guy. I think he's a good little role player on a team where he can get in the right fit, give you really solid minutes, and he's in that category of players who have like had a inexplicably monster game against the Bulls because everybody has in the last few years.
38
the
and
Bulls
19 last year.
Yeah, like just dropped a bomb on us, and I was like, who the hell is this Bobby Boucher guy just giving us buckets all night? But I mean, it is true that the Bulls are just kind of getting by with their lack of size right now. They still they outscored Brooklyn in the paint by 30 last night. They had a 14 rebounding advantage over Brooklyn last night. But at some point, you gotta wonder, like, okay, how much longer can we really survive with Javonte Green playing power forward for us? He's 6'4". Like, I mean, we'll see. And Bradley has gotten a solid backup center minutes to spell Vooch when he needs a rest. But that's going to be an interesting thing as we get closer to that trade deadline, because Kobe White is nearing his return from his offseason shoulder surgery. Meanwhile, the rookie Ayo Dosunmu is looking good. He had another big game in their win last night. People are talking about maybe Kobe White being a trade dangling kind of player if the Bulls don't need him, don't see him as a piece of their long-term future, and are looking to beef up that front court a little bit. So I'd say let's revisit this conversation in a couple of weeks once we see how Billy handles Kobe reintegrating into the rotation.
Kobe White for Chris Boucher. You heard it here first. When it goes down in the future, we'll clip this and share it out to the world and get all that sweet
Bulls
engagement.
fans are going to be coming for my head on that. I did not suggest a Boucher for Kobe straight up trade, just to be clear.
I'm going to edit that, and it's just going to say, I did suggest a Boucher for Kobe trade. This is what happens when you come on my podcast. I'm the boss. Matt, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was great chatting with you. Keep up the great work over at Locked On Bulls. Where can people check you out?
You can follow me on Twitter at Bulls_Peck, and we are at Locked On Bulls. And like you, we are also there on them YouTubes now. So subscribe to our Locked On Bulls YouTube channel as well.
You guys rock. Everyone go listen to Locked On Bulls to hear more DeMar propaganda and so much more. Thanks, Matt. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Sean. Take it easy, bud.
All right, we've got more appreciation of old pals coming up in just 1 second. Big thanks to Matt for jumping on the show to talk about DeMar. We got Giancarlo Navas from Miami Heat Beat coming up in just a sec here. But first, want to tell you about our friends over at rockauto.com. And rockauto.com is an amazing place. I know nothing about cars. I get scared. I don't know anything. I meet for a mechanic when I walk into an auto body shop and say, hey, my car is broken. Can you fix this? And they look at me and they go, oh, this fool, we're going to charge this dude for everything he's worth. And they do, until that is rockauto.com came along. And I now know I can go into a mechanic with the part that I need to be put in my car and say, hey, put this in, please. And they will, because they have to. It's a wonderful thing. You can go to rockauto.com. You can search their website. You can find names, models, specifications, prices, all the stuff that you need. And their site is super easy to use. It's very, very intuitive. If I can use it, you can use it, because I know nothing about cars. Either way, rockauto.com, they're a family business. You can trust them. They've been serving auto parts customers for 20 years, and their costs are reliably low for everybody, whether you're a professional or a do-it-yourselfer. You're really like just doing yourself a disservice to not be going to rockauto.com anytime you need a part for your car, whether it's big or small. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box to know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you will ever need at rockauto.com. And with that, we will now move into talking about one Kyle Lowry with Giancarlo Navas from Miami Heat Beat. And there he is joining me now on today's show from Miami Heat Beat is Giancarlo Navas, a man who on Twitter has branded himself as a Kyle Lowry lifer, which we love to see. One of the great Kyle Lowry propagandists out there. Giancarlo, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, listen, I've said for a while now, Kyle's been my favorite player, right? So, and I've been a Raptors fan by proxy for many years, and just him being in Miami has been a dream come true. I've been propagating this, Sean, for years. Twitter used to be mad at me because of how much I propagate Lowry, and everybody's finding my old Lowry tweets, and I like to be right. So, we really flipped the narrative on this one.
We love to see it. Really, we can't have enough people being happy about Kyle Lowry. Even if I know Raptors fans are taking like a weird exception to Heat fans maybe not having understood Kyle beforehand, or like national media not really having understood Kyle before October 20th when he started playing for the Heat. For me, I'm just happy to see more people learning about Kyle Lowry and how much he owns. Like, this is kind of the same thing that I'm feeling with DeMar DeRozan, where I'm just like very happy that people get to watch DeMar DeRozan and a new fan base gets to appreciate him. And I'm very much feeling that with Kyle Lowry. So let's dive into Kyle's numbers so far this season, Giancarlo. They've not been like terribly impressive, like from a stats perspective. He's been, let me just pull back up here, 10 points a game, 7.1 assists, 5.2 boards. He's not shooting terribly well, 38.6% from the field, 34% from three, just a 12.8 PER, all that stuff. He's not been like stuffing the stat sheet like prime Kyle Lowry. However, it's obvious that he has affected the way that the team plays. Can you detail the ways in which Kyle Lowry has made the Heat into this like insane juggernaut that they've mostly been until Nikola Jokic beat their ass both on the floor and off last night?
What a mess that was last night. So let's get into the defense, because I think that it starts with and their offensive numbers have been, I think, a little inflated lately. We'll see how that goes. But on the defensive end, Miami last season, and even going back to when they made the trade for Iguodala and for Crowder, really went from a drop team to a switch team, right? And the first year, even in their title run, even not title run, the finals run, The defense was a little shaky, but they managed to survive. They would hard show the guards and they would switch a lot. And Crowder wasn't the swiftest of foot while he is a switchable wing. You just have issues with quicker guys. And then last season, that really just bit them in the butt because they just couldn't guard anybody. They couldn't stay in front of everybody. Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Dragic just made them have to switch Bam out onto any guard who had a competent pick and roll game.
Right.
What happens when you do that is you compromise your back end. So you're giving up a ton of rebounds because now Bam is not helping out on that end. Your help defense is basically Jimmy Butler coming from the nail or coming from the corner to kind of stunt the drive and then close out on corner threes, which is why they were bleeding threes last season. So their point of attack defense was like horrendous. Yeah. Kyle comes in, sticks with the guards and pick and roll, can go over, can go under. Bam can play and drop, makes him a lot more deadly. Lets Jimmy roam passing lanes a lot easier, so they're getting a lot more deflections. They're getting out and running more, which kind of brings me to their offense. So they're playing at a breakneck pace when Kyle's in the game. 100, almost 102 possessions, and then when he's off the floor, they're at 95. Right. So they crawl when he's out. And when you're Miami and you don't have a ton of shooting, Duncan's having a down year. Jimmy's obviously not a shooter. Bam is not a shooter. The way you mitigate that is, well, you play fast, right? You're going to zip the ball up. Now you're going to attack mismatches. You're going to kind of find seams, not in a half court set. Now, according to Cleaning the Glass, their half court offense has been really good this season, partly because Kyle Lowry's a really good basketball player. But, he really, he gets them out and he gets them set up. And Sean, last season, I had this joke where I'd call Miami's offense a revolving door of dribble handoffs because they'd run a handoff and, you switch that. And by the way, that really started with the Raptors in the bubble, when they would kind of do Powell and OG, right? So you put OG on Duncan and you could switch that to Bam or vice versa. And that really just kind of was the blueprint to blowing up Miami's offense, which that year was almost top 5. Kyle gives you that downhill zip that doesn't matter. And last year, you'd run a handoff, and then when they switch that, you pivot to another handoff, and you're basically doing 4 handoffs, and you don't really get any cracks at the apple. Now this year they're getting to their offense a lot sooner. So instead of starting a play with 14 on the clock, it's a lot of 17, 20, right? They're doing it quicker, so they get a lot more bites at the apple. Which I think those are the things that stand out the most. Yeah. He's just been transformative, man. Hall of Fame point guard.
Yeah, we love to hear that. There's no disagreement there. And honestly, another sort of nice thing about him being in Miami is that now he's with the glamour franchise that everybody loves. That's only going to help his Hall of Fame case, I would think, if he's successful down there. So Raptors fans, stop being so precious about it and just enjoy that he's having
another
a good time.
All-Star appearance to really, once he's 7-time All-Star, I think that with the title, with the gold medal, I think that solidifies it.
Yeah, I would say he's probably. I think he's above the Mitch Richmond line now, but if that's the very unfair line we've set, I would say he's above it. But a couple of years of really good basketball with the Heat certainly won't hurt matters. I want to ask you, just there's so many different little things that Kyle does throughout a game that kind of are his pet things that he goes to gain an edge there, score a bucket here. I could go on a list of the number of things I love watching Kyle Lowry do, from throw his ass into a big when he's driving to create space.
That's my favorite.
Around them. There you go. Okay,
that is my favorite.
Love it so much. Okay, detail why you love it.
So and the reason why he's my favorite player is because he really, I think Zach Lowe used the phrase persnickety to define him, and Kyle is a savant. I think he's I think he's Chris Paul level genius of the game. Yep. And when that dude flies off a screen, or if that dude has an advantage or doesn't, he's programmed to well, how can I create this situation that might not be the most advantageous to being advantageous, or how can I get my guys a shot? Whether that is using your body, hitting the brakes, putting your butt in a dude, right? Whether it's using, we make the jokes on Twitter. He is a big dude. He is a strong, big dude. You're not going to bully him on a switch. Unless you're Embiid or something, for the most part, you're not getting anywhere. You don't really have to send help. So it's just this this self-awareness of his limitations, whether it be size, he's not a dead-eye shooter, right? I think he's a good shooter, he's not the best finisher. He understands, he's hyper aware of all his limitations, and that has become a strength for him. That's why I love those little, like what you're talking about, those little things, those little rotations, the super quick hands, the smart fouls. Like, he's just a genius, man. I love that dude.
Yeah, I think Daniel Tice still has a Lowry-shaped print in his thighs from the bubble whenever the Raptors needed a bucket, which was often in that series because their offense was like just garbage. He would just kind of like drive in, get Tice on his hip or his back, throw his ass into his hips, and then just go up and finish because he cleared out the lane. Yeah, it's a wonderful space clearer. That is the kindest way you can describe his posterior. So like with Lowry, I know there's been like this. So he, like, Tim McMahon had the whole like, oh, he's maybe the fourth best player on the team, or yada yada yada, that type of thing. Like, where do you think Kyle situates in terms of maybe not just like raw talent, because that's never been the way to evaluate Kyle Lowry, in terms of like importance to the Miami Heat winning basketball games? Where does he slot in the pecking order on the Heat?
That's actually a really difficult question because it might be two.
Yeah.
Right. It might be one. I mean, it's definitely 1 through 3. I mean, they can survive Hero not being around, right? I think that's a little ridiculous. And I think, listen, as I've watched Hero, we have to pump the brakes a little bit on Tyler. I think he has been really good. And I think a lot of what he's shown is promising, but I think people saying that he's, the numbers look good, of course, but I saw the games when Kyle didn't play or when Kyle's off the floor and how that looks like. Sean, I think one of the most important like metrics we need to look at to answer that question is the Kyle Jimmy on-off stuff. Now, the year that they made the finals, they were plus like 7 or 8 per 100 with Jimmy on, and they were -0 with him off. So they were able to just survive the non-Jimmy minutes. This is regardless of Bam. Last season, it was like +7, -7. So they were just getting decimated when he wasn't on the floor. This year, Jimmy on, Kyle off. They're surviving, right? So they have a 9. They're actually doing really good, 9 net rating. And Kyle on, Jimmy off, +19 in almost 100 minutes, right? So you let your superstar, your guy, I mean, the guy who's most likely to crack top 10 players in the league, right, is Jimmy. I don't think Bam's there yet. He will get there. I still think Jimmy's the best defender on the team. I still think Jimmy's the best player on the team. But Kyle really allows Jimmy and Bam to be there, to put themselves in scoring positions of where they catch the ball. And I did a video on that. It's on my Twitter page. Am I old for calling it a Twitter page? It's a Twitter account. I always feel like
I call it my Twitter feed or something like that. I don't know.
It makes me feel old.
Anyone who's on Twitter is old at this point. If you're not in the TikToks, which I'm not, I think you're washed.
We're not Zoomers.
I think I'm washed. Yeah.
Millennials are the new boomers. They catch, Kyle lets them catch the ball in like let's Bam in particular mid post, low post, lets them face up. I kind of like for Bam to be more of an Amare type player than anything else. And I think Kyle allows that. The way that Kyle uses handoffs is really kind of synergizes with Miami's offense. They used to run something where they would kind of have Siakam and Fred and Horns for Lowry, and then he would kind of fly off one of those screens and get the ball back and shoot. Miami does a ton of that with Jimmy and Bam and him. So he makes everything make sense, Sean. So it's hard for me to say, because they're a team that like they don't have a LeBron or a KD, right? Or I mean, even a Pascal, who might even be like more raw, naturally talented than anybody, right? They just have a lot of dudes that make sense. And Kyle was like Kyle was the key to like really, you know what I mean? Like everything kind of comes together, lets them play the defense they want, lets their guys play off ball enough, but on ball enough, right? Because he doesn't need to, like, unlike Fred, who's pounding the ball up top, which is great for Fred, but sometimes not good for other guys to get in rhythm. I think Kyle is a good mix of both of those. So it's hard to say. I will say that they look dreadful when Kyle didn't play that Indiana game. I mean, they're good with him off the floor, right? I mean, they're better with him on, but he's a missing piece.
I have one last quick one for you. You don't have to spend too much time on it, but there's a long and storied history of Kyle Lowry getting dudes paid. Obviously, the most famous example being Bismack Biyombo, just catching pick and roll passes from Kyle for an entire season. Was pretty damn good for Bismack's wallet. I have to ask you, of the members of this year's Miami Heat, who is most likely to earn the Kyle Lowry boost contract-wise going into either this coming summer or an upcoming summer sometime soon?
I would have said Duncan if you had asked me at the start of the season, but
Hmm.
he's really struggled. I do think Bam is the one that has benefited the most from him. I think people will
Right.
default to Tyler, right?
Right.
And the Tyler hero lineups have been really good. Again, +9 per 100 possessions, really good offense. But the way that he allows Bam to be his best self and most optimal self
Sure.
on both offense and defense, Bam's not running a million handoffs at the elbow. Kyle's
Right.
running the offense. So I'd probably go Bam, but Bam already got paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, we got to go deeper. We got to go, Omer, you're at 7. Is it going to be Caleb Martin? Like, who are we? Is Dwayne Dedmon about to get a late career contract?
I mean, I know that Markeith, just had his kerfuffle with Jokic, but Dedmon is another one, although Dedmon really plays well with Jimmy and did last year too. But I think Morris has been, I was out on Markeith when they signed him. I was like, I don't really understand what's the point of adding a dude who can't shoot that needs to play 5 to be effective.
Sure.
And because you have Dedmon as a backup 5 who's been really, really good. Dedmon is really like the plus minus king, the net rating king on the Heat. So Markeith really has, Kyle's been great with Markeith. Not that he's a good shooter, but he's been like a decent shooter with Kyle together. I think defensively they're good. Again, they're +9 per 100. Every lineup's like +9 per 100 possessions. It's crazy.
It's a good team, as it turns out. It's the Kyle effect.
It's almost as if he's a Hall of Fame point guard, Sean. Almost.
Yeah.
Some might say.
Well, Giancarlo, this is a pretty good place to leave it off, I think, with Hall of Fame propaganda being the tail of the show. I want to thank you so much for hopping on the show today. Do you have anything that you would like to promote?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, if you are a Raptors fan, listen, we're Raptors fan adjacent. I'm a Raptors lifer. Listen, I still watch my boys play. I love Fred. I know I slandered him a little bit, but I do it. It's tough love. I want him to be good. I want him to finish better at the rim. I'm happy that Precious is playing over there and all that. But you can check us out at Miami Heat Beat on Twitter, at MIA Heat Beat. That is the ad. You can also find our streams on Twitch, twitch.tv/MIA Heat Beat. We do post game shows. We do live podcasts. As a matter of fact, we have one tonight around 7:30. Kind of talk about that Jokic Markeith incident last night. So we have lots of fun content. We have our website that's about to relaunch, MiamiHeatBeat.com, where you can find tons of Kyle Lowry propaganda that I will be writing amongst the many in our wonderful, beautiful staff. We also have, listen, I always try to squeeze in a ton of Raptor guests. So Sean, you may get that call soon when those games
Always
come
happy
up.
to talk about anything relating to Kyle Lowry, including the Miami Heat. Totally fine with that.
I stuff as much Raptors in as I can, to the point that they get mad at me. But
well, Giancarlo, it was awesome. Everyone go follow him on his Twitter page, as he says, and we will round it out there. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. Also, thanks to Matt Peck from Locked On Bulls for stopping by to talk about DeMar. And we'll be back again tomorrow with John Corrales from Locked On Celtics, teeing up Raptors Celtics on Wednesday. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen of the day, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, as Josh Lloyd is covering everything you need to know for your DFS, your season long, your dynasty, whatever it is in fantasy basketball. Josh Lloyd has you covered. He's doing like 14 podcasts a week or something like that. So go and follow Josh. He knows what he's talking about. He's the very best. That'll do it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.